Welcome to Film Creative Voices. We're your hosts. I'm Arlyn Pena, and this is
WalterTalens.
And today we are doing a community episode
where we're going to be speaking with community leaders and community activists that basically helps out the Filipino American community and affects the Filipino American community. And our guest today is, help me say this,
Aqui Soriano
Versoza.
I think he thinks he's Italian. That's okay.
AKA Aki.
We're so honored and privileged to have her. She's done so much for the community for many, many years. And we are so thankful as film creative and Filipino American artists to have somebody like her in our corner and helping us and many, many others throughout the community.
Yes, and she is one of the main supporters of Film Creative's Voices. She allows us to be here in this space, so we're very thankful to have her help us out in this cause. And she's just an awesome person. So I'm really looking forward to talk to her and just learning more about her.
And how are you with community service, Walter? Have you been involved with anything throughout the community?
Yes, I mean, probably not as much as some of the folks here at PWC, but I remember going back as far back as like fifth grade in my elementary school. I grew up in San Francisco, and we did ocean beach cleanup. So
cool.
We would clean up the beaches and doing something like that. And then most recently, I was helping out a organization called Coach Art.
What's that?
Which is you basically take kids from different grades, young kids, usually underprivileged kids, and help them learn arts or something like that. You teach them how to play, learn how to paint, learn to play music, sports. And in my case, I was teaching them like martial arts, like Filipino martial arts, Kali and Taekwondo and stuff like that.
Oh, nice.
Just give them the basics and stuff like that. And some of them it's the kids or their siblings and or both. And a good amount of them are also underprivileged kids with illnesses.
Oh, wow.
So
I did something kind of similar like that.
Oh, which one?
I don't remember what it was. So
Okay.
I had a best friend in Texas growing up. We actually lived in Washington State together, and then we convinced her family to move to Texas as well 1 year after my family moved. Shout out to you, Bernadette. And her family was very involved with the community in San Antonio. And so my very first thing, it's somewhere out there, there's footage of this, where it was a Halloween thing, and it was something with kids with an illness as well. And so we didn't really have costumes, but we did have Taekwondo outfits, both of which we did not do, but we just happened to have them. And so
they're like, you're Asian, and I believe it.
I remember like somebody, like I went to school the next day and everyone was like, oh, I saw you on the news. Like you and your friend were like looking like this right at the camera. Like there were like kids playing around. And so we were doing something very similar where we're doing like lots of arts and crafts and just kind of, I don't know if it was like make a wish or something to that effect. But yeah, we volunteered all around town, and yeah, it was fun.
It's awesome. Yeah, I mean, it was a great experience, and just the people who volunteer there was great, and I think it was originally arts, like teaching them how to paint, how to draw. And then they started getting into like having us do sports or play sports with the kids just because they wanted to get them moving, instead of being stagnant or, and we work with their disability too and stuff like that. So it was an eye-opening experience for me, just being able to work with kids. So yeah. What about, we're going to be talking to Aki about like PWC or Filipino Worker Center again. And they do a lot of stuff with the community and with the local community. And I mean, some of the stuff they do here is like helping out senior citizens.
Yes.
And immigrants or, help me out here.
Labor laws.
There you go.
Voting. Sometimes there's a language barrier when it comes to finding out rights for the community and even how the voting process works here in the United States. And PWC does a great job. I'm always hearing Ian helping somebody. He's fabulous. And it's nice. Like I can remember this one conversation we must have been here for another event, but they were here in the conference room, and he was helping one of the aunties who could not speak English very well, and her phone bill was astronomically overcharged. And so he was able to talk to a representative and discuss things with them to get charges taken off, which is huge because, with a lot of immigrants, they're not making, they're not rolling in the dough when they first come to the States, or if they've been here a long time, they might not have the means to just afford, certain luxuries of life, and to have a difference of what your phone bill costs. That's huge. I mean, that's food.
Well, it's also something that I think young people and first generation, second generation, or even just Americans who's been here for a while, that's something I don't think they realize or think about is how difficult it can be to immigrate to a new country, and then especially if you're already like a senior citizen or past your prime kind of thing, right? And there's some immigrants, not just Filipino Americans out there, who they get that green card or they get that immigration acceptance, and then they come here in the later stages of their lives, but it's always been their dream to come to America, and then realize it's a whole different world. There's all these sharks wanting to take advantage of them. And the great thing is that the Filipino Worker Center, Ian was there helping folks like that out. So I thought that was really impressive, and I'm pretty sure there's other organizations out there that does the same thing for different ethnic groups or different communities, which shout out to all those other organizations. You guys are doing great service to the community and to the people, because some of those folks don't have kids or family here. It's just them, or a lot of them are spread out. So when I try to put myself in their place, I can't even imagine how difficult that could be.
Right. And I mean, both of us came here as immigrants to the United States. I came from Europe, from Germany.
As I can tell.
That's how I heard that Italian, right? and Walter, you came here when you were 12? How old were you again when you came to the States?
I was 10.
Oh, 10. Yeah. Sorry, I was 2 years off, guys. From the Philippines. And even that is an adjustment. I came here when I was very young, right before kindergarten. And it was different, I had a lot of memories of just language barriers and cultural shock. And so, it's great that we have these other resources out here that can help all ages and all communities.
And I mean, coming from Europe and, Germany, I just do want to say like Italy, I was saying Versoza.
No.
Okay. I think it's just because I'm just so influenced by the pizza, which is our food for today.
I thought you were trying to get stationed in Italy.
Oh, I would love to. But, because we got Pizza Rev sponsoring our shoot today.
Yes.
So shout out to Pizza Rev. Thank you.
And we also have, we do have dessert pizza from Pizza Rev, and also other dessert from Cafe 86.
Cafe 86. Thank you. Thank you guys for sponsoring Phil Am Creative's Voices. We really appreciate you. That being said, let's get ready and go prepare and bring Aki over. And so we'll go talk to her after a word from our sponsors.
Stay tuned.
This episode is sponsored in part by Pizza Rev. Pizza Rev serves award-winning oven-fired personal pizzas customized by you. Choose from a variety of thoughtfully sourced ingredients from locations all over Southern California and nationwide. Or heat up your next meeting, event, or podcast taping with Pizza Rev Catering. Pizza Rev. Eat well, be full, be revolutionary. This episode is sponsored in part by Cafe 86. Cafe 86 specializes in tea, coffee, and desserts, featuring ube, the distinctly purple Filipino yam. Come into any of Cafe 86 locations in Southern California and the newly opened location in Las Vegas, Nevada. Try their ube cracked cheesecake, turon pie tarts, and Voices crew favorite ube leche flan cupcakes. Cafe 86, tea, coffee, and all things a la mode.
Hey guys, we're back. We have here Aqui Soriano Versoza. Sorry, I can't help it. I love it. I love saying that. Welcome to Voices.
Well, it's great to be here. Thank you.
And I just want to say thank you for having Phil Am Creative and Phil Am Creative Voices here at the Filipino Worker Center. in historic Filipino town in Los Angeles, California. We really appreciate you and thank you for letting us be here and letting use your space.
Well, this is Larry Itliong Village, and we're here to become a community space and to support our Filipino community. So we're really happy to have you here.
You have quite the career. I'm going to fangirl a little bit. I'm not even going to wait. So you started off as a child actor, and you are actually in one of my most favorite movies growing up. You guys, she is the girl from Troop Beverly Hills. Which I was always wondering what country they came from, because the dad was, this dictator of like some random country, but no one knew. But his name was Bong Bong.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, my character was one of the first very specifically Filipino characters.
Yes.
Even though I was the dictator's daughter, that was the character. But
Yes.
I was one of the few actual Filipinos, not just a token Asian, but yeah.
And what year was that movie?
It came out in I think we filmed it in 88 and it came out in 89, I believe. That was middle school for me.
Oh,
Wow.
So was it supposed to be like sort of related to like Marcos? Like,
Absolutely.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yes. That was a direct spoof on the Marcos dictatorship. So they actually got a Filipino, the actor who played him is a Marcos lookalike. But
Funny.
he's actually a doctor in Beverly Hills.
Oh, really?
Oh.
And he's the brother of Jose Maria Sison, who's like the father of the National Democratic Revolution
What?
in the Philippines. Yeah.
Wow.
Oh my
But that was part of his gig in the 80s, was to do like impersonations of Marcos here
Wow.
in Hollywood.
Oh my gosh.
Fun fact, guys.
That's so amazing, because seriously, growing up, I never lived around a lot of Filipinos, and you were very clearly Filipino. The family was very clearly Filipino, even,
With lots of shoes.
Yeah, lots of shoes, and then the dancing, and yeah, it was awesome to see, this Girl Scout, this Troop Beverly Hills girl, the one and only Filipino in that troop. So thank you so much. You literally, oh my gosh, I've watched that movie so many times. I was so in love with it. Like, I remember the scene when you were sleeping, she took off your glasses. I was like, oh my God, see, she cares. It's like, ugh, I love it. And so how did you go from acting into what you do now, into social justice and fighting for the community?
Well, so I was born in the middle USA, right in the Midwest, Omaha, Nebraska. And we traveled here, came to California, and we're in California, so I wanted to try acting. So when I went to acting, I just started doing lots of commercials, Barbie, Baby Cookie, tons of Mattel stuff, Doritos, Pepsi. I don't know if you remember that thing. No. It was like a summer thing where I don't know, everyone did this. Anyways,
It was like the
dance.
Egyptian dance.
Yeah.
Rodney, we gotta get a clip of that. Can we
Or
play it real
reenactment.
quick?
We'll do a reenactment.
Gotta go through the archives of stuff.
But I actually lived in Orange County, so we'd drive up every day. My mom would drive me up after school to auditions, and then when I got stuff, I would go and film. And so I thought that actually I was just my direction was gonna be acting, and I came to UCLA, went to school. I studied up here at an acting school, and a lot of it was about, I studied in Burbank, and so I was very, very, very much deeply into acting.
What was your major at UCLA?
First I was undecided, then I went to environmental studies, but then there was a couple old white professors that totally turned me off to environmental studies. And I just started getting involved on campus. So coming from the Midwest and then Orange County, I was very sheltered in many ways. So my father, he was born here in Detroit. And his mother died in childbirth with him.
Oh my goodness.
And my grandfather couldn't really handle taking care of him. So he went to military school, boarding school, Catholic school, and was raised more by families in the Catholic Church. So he didn't have a lot of community around him. And then my mom, she's actually Japanese and Dutch. And she was born in Omaha, Nebraska. And she was adopted into a small farming family there. So they met during the 70s at a religious commune. And my dad was the first Asian that my mom had ever met.
Oh my
person. Like she'd seen
goodness.
some from afar, but he was the first one she ever met. And then 3 months later, they were married.
Wow.
So it was very much like nuclear, and we mostly lived in suburbs. So it's kind of isolated.
So your mom was like, they do exist.
Asians. She's like touching him. Are you sure you're real?
What was that like for your, because I'm sure your family told you stories of what it was like to, you know, live in Nebraska and, you know, be the one and only Asian, you know, like
My mom was
family
the
that was there.
only Asian in the entire town because she was adopted into a white family.
Wow.
So she had all kinds of issues growing up, and just you know, it was not long after after World War II. So there was still a lot of animosity against you know, Japanese people also, and she was mixed. You know, so it was very rough for her growing up. So I think she just latched onto my dad, the first Asian. She's like, okay, we're gonna build a family together.
Wow.
But so I actually got into activism because I wanted to go to my roots because I hadn't had that kind of community around me growing up. So I started looking into my culture, my heritage. I joined Samahang Pilipino then.
Yeah, because back then Orange County wasn't as diverse or thing as it is now, even, right?
Right. And we lived in like South Orange County. So there was some Filipinos, there were a few Asians, but it was predominantly white too.
Yes.
So, but a very good academic school.
They do have great school districts.
So then I just like my eyes were opened at UCLA to the world and realizing that there's racism and actually that made my family's history and my parents' experiences just like make sense. It's like, oh, that's why, you know, like it was really hard for my dad. He had to move around a lot of different jobs, you know, and he got profiled by police, you know, different things. And it's like, oh, it's not actually him. It's like, that's just what's happening in the dynamics of this country.
How did your parents, I guess, explain those stories to you? Did you witness any of them? Or like, how do you explain that to your child, you know?
I don't think we actually really talked about it. It's just something we experienced and that was just the way it was.
Well, like you were saying that when you started taking class in UCLA, then you kind of learned or realized it was racism. I guess, like how, in context, like how does that come about? Like you grew up, it's not just in a vacuum. I'm sure you experienced it. You just didn't know what was happening to you.
Yeah, even because my mom was adopted into a white family, right? So, like my adopted grandmother, you know, would come and stay with us, but she was very much had a lot of racism towards African Americans because that was kind of the context of the towns there. So, like, she'd use the N-word and stuff. Like, my brother's playing a basketball team at this other school that's predominantly black, and she's like, "Oh, we're gonna beat those N-words." You know, it's like,
Wow.
It was like, "Oh, wow," you know, and
No filter.
yeah. So, or my mom having a boyfriend who was white after my parents already broke up, but who would say like, "Oh, I can blindfold you with dental floss." You know?
Oh my
It's like,
goodness.
Wow.
Oh my goodness. Like, there's like no response for that. You know, they don't even know how to like respond to that. Oh my gosh.
And you know, and I realized in this journey, like, you know, I became very angry, like first when I went to college and like learning all these things and really going through even my experience in Hollywood, you know, like just like the limitations to the roles that I could play. You know, I was very fortunate and I did very well. I got a lot of things, but but it's like limited to, I did get a lot of token Asian roles, you know. I did get the Asian nerd role. I did, you know, but the lead character, that, you know, like, I could see that in kind of hindsight. And then just even, you know, sometimes the creepiness of producers and stuff, you know, like in
Yes.
Hollywood. So
Oh my gosh.
yeah.
Yes.
So I could reflect on that. And for a while, I was kind of like that angry person and like didn't want to have anything to do. I kept on acting all the way through college. And then as I got more and more involved, I just wanted to go and experience things. So I went to the border regions and talked with maquiladora workers and orphanages and people in the border towns there. I went to Native American reservations where they were trying to stop dumping on their lands, and like camped out with them because they like blockaded the dumps so that the trucks couldn't come in. I got involved in police abuse issues and stuff here in downtown LA. And so I just felt like the best thing I could do, I'd book learned for a long time and I was like a really good student, but more than that, I wanted to get like life experience. So I just got out there and started doing anything I could, getting exposed, talking to people. And then I just felt my focus shift, you know, and the last role that I did in Hollywood was for Unhappily Ever After.
Oh, really?
I don't know if you remember that with Bobcat
Yes.
Goldthwait. I played the Asian nerd in the daughter's class. Where she's the sexy smart one, you know.
Let's get a clip of that.
And they actually wanted my character's name was Sushi.
Wow.
I was like,
wow.
you know, that's it's not even funny, actually.
I vaguely remember that.
Well,
Oh
I
my
got them to
gosh.
change it to just Susie. It's like, it's a real name. Are you going to call someone hamburger or something? You know, it's like, so anyways, and it wasn't funny at all. So I got them to change that. But that was still, you know, the role I played. But that paid for my trip to go to the Philippines.
And you went to the Philippines for, was it 1 year?
Yeah, for a year. And then that's when I just like kind of deep dived into the community there and spent time with on the picket lines with the students who are fighting for
Did you see
tuition.
like a common theme through all these different cultures and subcultures from the States to overseas? Did you see a commonality?
I mean, definitely there are commonalities, and a lot of it is just in the humanity and people's like common dreams and visions. But when I went to the Philippines, it opened up my eyes. Like, you know, leaving America and then learning like what we thought here, or we couldn't even think of like a baseline reality of what I
Like poverty
experienced in
over
the
there is different than the poverty
things that we
here.
thought were necessary to live.
Yeah.
People don't have over there, right?
In context, like what year was this? Or
96 to 97.
okay. And so when you were out there getting involved, like what were the issues and topics that you were like learning or discovering and getting active?
Well, that's when there was the Visiting Forces Act, you know, where they had closed down the base, but now it's kind of opening up all of the military bases for use by the U.S. And the issues of pollution and stuff like that. Just the issue of like basic wages, running water, you know, sanitation in like the barangays. And also in like minimum wages in like the Century Tuna Factory, for example.
okay.
Like I got to go and see like how they work, like what their actual work is, and then like how much they're actually making per day.
Now, how did they, like you being an American, you know, did they see you as a Filipino coming home or an American?
Like a film.
A film or just an American that looks Filipino? And like, or how did they treat you when you came in to be involved in their activism?
Well, first I can tell you how I felt. Like coming in, when I first got there, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm average height. This is amazing. but then like I really felt the being American just because of just such a different situation. And then I didn't know any Tagalog at all. No, maybe I knew like one word.
Konti lang.
Not even that much. Because neither of my parents knew Tagalog or never spoke it at all. So what I knew by listening to some songs. And so when I went over there, was like, part of my journey was just learning how to speak Tagalog.
Okay.
And I would study it, and I had my little Tagalog book, and then someone would sit and help me with it, and then I just try saying things the next day. Like I put together a speech. Ako po si Aquilina. And just like simple things. Kain na. And the hardest thing sometimes, like I remember one time I got so frustrated just because like I couldn't understand the jokes, and it just made me feel so separate. Like I didn't have the context yet to understand all of the jokes. So by the end, I was getting pretty good. But so that was just like, because language is like so, it's such an embodiment of culture. And so there's all these different kinds of references and different things that I just, words that like kind of translate the same are not exactly the same, right?
Yeah.
And so that's something I had to learn just by being there. For them, I mean, like for the people that I worked with, a lot of them were student activists, especially. I mean, they were very open and gracious. So they like definitely appreciated that I was there, and that I really just like dove in like head first. Anything, I'm game. Any kind of conditions, I can take it. I can. If that's what they do, then that's what I'm going to do.
Awesome.
So I learned how to eat with my hands. I learned how to, just go with like a little bit of food, and just really live together with them and struggle together with them. I learned how to ride the jeepney system.
Oh, yeah.
And they appreciated that I was really trying, to integrate myself and trying to speak. And even like by the end of the year, my Tagalog still wasn't very good, but I was really trying. And I gave a speech, and I like wrote out my whole speech, and I gave it in front of this big gathering. And everyone's like, yeah, Aki, Tagalog, yeah. And I don't know that they actually understood what I said, but they were like so supportive.
Yeah, it's like it wasn't the content; it was that you tried.
Yes.
Speaking of support, so, you have these speeches that you do that are so passionate with the community here in LA. And of course, you'll get your hecklers, your full-on supporters. And then, it's just like this huge variance of different types of people. How do you deal with the people who, make weird comments or negative comments towards the things that you're fighting for? The trolls. Oh my God, the trolls. They're so out there, guys.
They're so out there, especially around immigration.
Yes, yes. I read some of the comments on YouTube, and I was like, good Lord.
What? People would have opinions about immigration?
Oh my goodness. And they're not even subtle. They're like really, really strong opinions. And it's surprising.
Yeah. And within our own community too,
yes,
right?
Yes, yes.
So if you go on like Asian Journal or TFC, the comments. But I mean, for me, partly, in some ways, I'm partly insulated from that because we've built a really, we have almost 1,500 members of PwC, and we work in these really amazing coalitions like the California Domestic Worker Coalition, the LA Worker Center Network. And so a lot of things that I'm going to are like packed with people who are like, who believe in the same things and who are fighting for the same things. So that's more of the overwhelming feeling that I get. And so even like, I'm not a performer anymore, but like doing speeches, I use a lot of skills that I learned from acting. So in terms of just
they're powerful,
being present,
they're
being
so
connected. And thank you. Because it's the energy, right? You're able to connect into this large energy of a movement, and singing too. And that kind of crowd is like so amazing. It's like better than, it's better than anything in Hollywood, because it's just like you're there together,
So in a way, you're like, you feel like your acting background helps you in becoming a community organizer?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's so many of the skills that transfer. You'd be amazed. And especially because I'm a director. So I do a lot of public speaking. And the type of acting that I did was, it was called Acting for Life. And it was, a lot of it was about like dropping into your center, being very present, letting things go moment to moment, you know, and so that you flow with the energy of another person. It's not being in your head here, you know, and contriving who your character is. So in that way, it's like I'm able to drop into those skills, connect with someone, even like when I'm working with a caregiver who has a wage claim, right? Knowing how to really connect, listen, I mean, it makes a lot of difference, you know?
Wow. I'm kind of wondering what would have happened if, like an alternate universe where you studied method acting instead.
Oh my goodness. It would look totally different. Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit more about your guys' current programs that you have going on in the community with PWC?
Yeah. I mean, we're doing so many things. It's really exciting. I mean, even though we're in a moment when there are so many kind of horrible things happening with families being separated, and there was a raid where like Filipinos got swept up and picked up by ICE just in these last 2 weeks.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and when we're discovering human trafficking survivors, like we just did a rescue about a month ago, you know. So there are all these like very heavy things that are going on, but I think for me, it's being able to actually take action around things that gives me energy in this, and we're able to be very creative. We're always thinking of new, innovative ways that we can reach out to new people, that we can actually transform society. So, and we use some theatrical, like theater exercises when we do organizing.
Can you give an example?
Sure. So one thing we do is a self-care workshop. And so a lot of the people that we work with, not all, but if you're a domestic worker or a human trafficking survivor, you know, like you've been through trauma, right? And so the self-care workshop is about kind of like going through and being able to start to reflect, because you've always been giving also as a caregiver, so that you're able to take time to reflect and also do healing for yourself by using like workshops where you're moving your body as well. So you're also putting yourself in other people's shoes as you're feeling like, and appreciating the things that you've been through, and it helps to release things, you know, like acting does, right?
So it's like allowing them to express themselves, because they're spending most of the time taking care of other people in a way. So it's like just them releasing that whatever pent up energy or frustrations they may have, right?
Yeah, or embodying things they've been through. So like in like maybe an abusive kind of work situation, what, like being able to kind of like act out like what they went through, and then being able to act out what it is to like transform from that.
That's awesome.
It must be like super interesting to watch people who don't have a theater or, you know, acting background to kind of have the self-discovery and express themselves, because I can imagine a lot of people are very shy and kind of concealed, right? So, wow, they must feel amazing afterwards.
And go through fear, go through, you know, a lot. And then we've also done improv. We worked with Second City to actually do improv classes with caregivers. Because caregiving itself, you need improvisation skills, especially you have folks with dementia and Alzheimer's. You don't want to argue with them. You want to go with them and flow with them and like redirect and stuff. And so the framework of yes and, you know, in improvisation.
Life skills.
Exactly.
Wow.
Guys.
It's leadership development, actually.
Wow. So don't take your acting classes for granted. There's other uses for them.
That's right.
You don't even need to go to an acting class. You can just go to PWC and they will put you through these workshops.
That's right.
And help the community. So it's a win-win for everybody. Yeah. So how do people get involved?
There are lots of different ways. So, I mean, we do a lot around, like you said earlier, labor issues. Wage theft is a big problem. Here in Los Angeles, this is the biggest wage theft capital of the world. $26.2 million a week in stolen wages here in Los Angeles.
What?
Yes. And so, like, if you think of poverty in that context, like, this is actually money that people worked for and earned but just didn't receive and then couldn't use for their families.
Now, for the people listening and watching this, can you explain to us, like, they're probably going to be asking, how is that even possible in today's, like, digital age? Like, how can there be wage theft? Like, can you explain that?
So there's different types of wage theft. One is just being paid less than minimum wage. One is like non-payment sometimes of like you're working and you just didn't get paid for those hours. Sometimes it's like also not get any breaks or breaks or meal breaks throughout the day. So you just worked and worked and worked. But so, for example, caregivers, it's rampant in the domestic worker industry. Caregivers, we have two big cases right now. And in one, it's caregivers who are working one-on-one through an agency, but in individual homes. And on average, they're getting paid $5 an hour with no overtime, usually working 24-hour shifts, like around the clock. And the owner was making a lot of money. The agency, we kind of figured it was like around $50,000 a month. That was her take home.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And then we also have another big case where it was it's workers who worked in a board and care facility called Adat Shalom, and they were paying the workers like about $3.20 an hour with no overtime.
Wow.
And 24-hour shifts with like 6 people that they're caring for with really heavy, needing help with restroom, lifting, dementia, all kinds of things. So, and people just felt like they didn't have a lot of choices, or didn't necessarily know.
That's crazy because if they were a registered nurse, with a license, they would be easily making 50, 60, 70 an hour.
Right.
For personal care like that or more. Sometimes it's 80 and up. So that's wild.
Now I'm just curious. Are they being taken advantage by people within their own community, or it's across the board? Like
it's both. So in the home care industry, it's both. We do have a lot of Filipino owners, and some are good and some are not, right? And some of it use that utang na loob to like, at least I'm giving you a job kind of thing. And then there are like the one agency case is Filipino owned, Filipina owned, and then the other one is Jewish owned. So it's not a Filipino owner.
Now, I just want to talk about real quick about one of the big things you guys did, which was the California's Domestic Workers Bill of Rights. Can you just real quick tell us about how important is that for the people in California, and like what are you guys trying to do with that? Are you trying to make that go national?
Yeah, absolutely. Like in the 1930s, domestic workers and farm workers were excluded from all the protections that all other workers get. And not for any good reason, but actually because the Southern legislators did not want to shake up the economic and racial hierarchy of the South that was not that long out of slavery. So they actually want to exclude all African Americans. When that wasn't possible, they said, let's do the next best thing. Let's exclude domestic workers and farm workers because that's where they were mostly working. And that was the compromise to be able to get that law. And so until we actually passed the California Domestic Workers Bill of Rights, caregivers and nannies were excluded from overtime protections. Which is a part of that 75-year exclusion from the 1930s.
Wow.
Yeah. And so we actually had 11 rights that we were fighting for because it was a Bill of Rights, right? We won overtime rights. So it became a Bill of Rights, but it was really important. And part of it was because, one, it actually brought the issue into the community and into visibility. So we even got Hollywood involved too. Amy Poehler did a PSA, and because part of our work is like, you can't just pass policy, you have to make it a reality in different ways. So part of it is also culture change and culture shift. So which is about like pop culture, actually. So we talk to editors and producers through our National Domestic Worker Alliance. We talk to folks in Hollywood. They get to hear actual stories of domestic workers so that they can base then stories that they do on real stories. And then we're also doing enforcement. So how do we make those rights a reality that, okay, we have overtime rights now, but there are still so many people being paid even less than minimum wage.
Right.
Yeah. So we're also helping people to file back wage claims, and then we're also doing kind of bigger class action suits. But then at the same time, we want a positive model too. So we've built a cooperatively owned home care agency called Courage. So this is a positive model of what an agency could and should be. And then we're also going after new policy that would fund and subsidize families that just can't afford home care, because there is a big gap in terms of like caregivers can't afford home care when they need home care when they're older too. And they can't retire because they never earn enough to save. But so we kind of approaching the problem in a comprehensive way so that, because we don't just care about caregivers, also these are like two vulnerable populations, people who need care and those who are giving care. So this is about industry transformation, how we transform how this country cares so that everyone has access to real choices where they can age in their homes and in their communities versus going to like an institution. And basing that on being able to pay caregivers what they should be paid and treating them with the dignity they should be given.
When do you sleep?
That's so awesome.
Just like, oh my gosh.
Well, I don't do
that's a
this
lot.
myself.
Yeah.
Takes a movement.
That's a huge accomplishment. My goodness. Congrats. That's huge.
We're making progress too.
Thank you for what you guys do, you and everyone in PwC. I knew some of the stuff, but like I'm glad we got to speak to you and you got to share more. And like I got schooled today. Thank you for that. For the people listening and the people watching, let them know how can they follow PwC and how to get more information.
We have a very active Facebook page, and you can also, our website will be soon redesigned as well. We'll have a lot of great opportunities, especially around the election time, because we want to lift up the Filipino voice, whether you can vote or whether you can't vote yet. Actually, you can actually be involved in our Filipino Voter Empowerment Project. You can do phone banking, and you can help educate people to make really good decisions. We have different volunteer opportunities, like we have a human trafficking program that people can volunteer with, and our work. We do a lot of workshops and outreach events that people can volunteer for as well. But we do have an Instagram and a Twitter account. Facebook, but Facebook is the most active. So
okay, and your website is pwcsc.org.
That's correct.
So check them out if you guys want to learn more or volunteer with PwC. Their website is pwcsc.org. And if you guys want to check out Phil Creative Voices, check out Phil Creative on Instagram, and we are also on Facebook. So I'm WalterTalens,
and I'm Arlyn Dela Pena.
This is Phil Creative's Voices. Thanks for watching.
Today's episode brought to you by the good folks at Filipino Worker Center. From the heart of historic Filipino town, PwC focuses on providing programs that help meet the immediate needs of workers and their families, while at the same time building their leadership to take collective action for long-lasting change. This episode of Voices brought to you by our wonderful and talented cast and crew. Director Rodney Cajudo, producer and host WalterTalens, producer and host Arlyn Dela Pena, producer director of photography Wynston Fernando, producer sound design and social media Charles Gray, cam ops Paolo Artesia, Cheryl Nathan, production coordinator and staff writer Roni Canieso, production assistant Rachel Ann Kuwilan, and BTS photography and videography by Ren Arieta.